My son looked me in the eye and said he was just going inside to buy me a bottle of water. 5 minutes later, I watched his Ford Expedition peel out of the parking lot, leaving me standing in the blistering Nevada heat with nothing but the dust on my shoes. They thought I was just a senile old man, a useless burden standing between them and the sale of my house. They thought abandoning me at a gas station in the middle of nowhere was the perfect crime. They had no idea that the man they left behind was not just a retired mechanic living on a pension. They had no idea that in 48 hours my face would be on every news channel in the country, not as a victim, but as the man who just signed an $800 million contract. Before I tell you how I made my own son regret the day he was born, please like and subscribe to the channel if you believe that betrayal should always have consequences. The heat hit me first. It was a solid wall of 104-degree dry air that felt like it was trying to push me back into the filthy restroom I had just exited. The smell of diesel and stale urine was suffocating. I squinted against the glare of the midday sun, my eyes scanning the cracked asphalt of the gas station parking lot. Pump 4. That was where we had stopped. That was where Jason had parked the black Ford Expedition. It was empty. There was just a pool of oil shimmering in the heat, and a piece of tumbleweed stuck against the concrete island. I blinked, rubbing my eyes with the back of my hand. I must be confused. At 70 years old, my memory was not what it used to be, or at least that is what my daughter-in-law Monica liked to tell everyone. I turned my head, scanning the side of the building, checking the air pump station, looking toward the exit ramp. Nothing. A cold knot formed in my stomach, defying the desert heat. I told myself to be rational. Jason was a good boy. He was my son. He probably just moved the car to the shade to keep the air conditioning running for Monica. She hated the heat. She had been complaining about the drive since we left the house 3 hours ago for this supposed surprise vacation. I walked around the perimeter of the convenience store. My legs felt heavy. My bad knee, the one I injured on an oil rig back in '82, throbbed with every step on the hot pavement. I checked the back of the building. Nothing but a dumpster and a stray dog sleeping in the shadow of a propane tank. I went back to the front. I stood there for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. The sun was beating down on my bald spot, burning my scalp. I was thirsty. Jason had promised me water. I patted my pockets instinctively. Empty. My phone was in the center console of the truck. My wallet was in the glove compartment because Monica said it was uncomfortable to sit on during a long drive. I was 70 years old, alone in the Nevada desert, with no money, no phone, and no water. I pushed open the glass door of the gas station. The bell chimed a cheerful sound that felt mocking. The air conditioning inside was freezing, drying the sweat on my forehead instantly. The cashier was a young man with a neck tattoo and headphones around his neck, staring blankly at a smartphone. "Excuse me, son," I said. My voice sounded raspy, weak. He didn't look up. I tapped the counter, louder this time. "Excuse me. Did you see a black Ford Expedition at Pump 4A, big SUV?" My son was driving. The kid finally looked up, his eyes glazed over with boredom. He popped a bubble of gum. "The big black truck." "Yeah. Where did they go? Did they move to the back?" He laughed, a short, dry sound. "Moved to the back, no pops. They filled up, bought 2 Red Bulls and a bag of chips and peeled out of here like the devil was chasing them. That was like 20 minutes ago. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I gripped the counter to keep from falling. "That is impossible," I stammered. "He said he was buying me water. He said he would be right back." The kid shrugged, turning his attention back to his phone. "Well, he lied. They got on the interstate, headed east. They are gone." I stood there frozen. My mind was racing, trying to find an explanation that didn't destroy my entire world. Maybe it was an emergency. Maybe they got a call about the house. But why wouldn't they come get me? Why leave me? Can I see the security footage? I asked. Please, I need to know. The kid sighed, clearly annoyed that I was interrupting his scrolling. He tapped a few keys on the monitor behind the counter and turned the screen toward me. There it was. Grainy black and white footage. I saw myself walking into the restroom. I saw Jason standing by the pump. I saw Monica lean out of the passenger window. She said something to him. He nodded. He didn't look toward the restroom. He didn't hesitate. He got in the driver's seat. And then I saw the car accelerate. They didn't just leave. They fled. The tires kicked up dust as they merged onto the highway without even a brake light flashing. They left me. The realization hit me harder than any physical blow. They had abandoned me. My son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike. The man whose debts I had secretly paid off more times than I could count. He had left me to die in the desert. I felt a sharp pain in the center of my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was my angina. My heart condition. I needed my medication. My nitroglycerin pills were in my brown leather bag. Where was my bag? I looked at the screen again. Just before they drove off, I saw Monica's hand come out of the window. She threw something. A small brown object. It landed near the trash can by the pump. I turned and ran. Or at least I tried to run. I shuffled as fast as my old legs would carry me back out into the furnace of the parking lot. The heat was overwhelming now. My chest felt like it was being squeezed by a giant metal vise. I couldn't breathe. I reached the trash can by pump 4. It was overflowing with garbage. Fast food wrappers, coffee cups, sticky soda bottles. The smell was rancid, a mix of rotting food and hot plastic. I didn't care. I plunged my hands into the filth. I dug through the layers of other people's refuse. Passers-by at the other pumps stared at me. A woman in a minivan pulled her children closer, looking at me with disgust. They saw a crazy old homeless man digging for food. They didn't see a father looking for his life. "Where is it?" I wheezed. My fingers brushed against something textured. Leather. I pulled it out. My brown medicine bag. It was stained with ketchup and something sticky, but it was there. I fumbled with the zipper, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I ripped it open. The bottle of pills was there. Thank God. I unscrewed the cap, popped a pill under my tongue, and closed my eyes, waiting for the chemical release, waiting for the vice around my heart to loosen. As I sat there on the hot concrete leaning against the metal trash can, waiting for my heart to stabilize, I saw it. Inside the bag, tucked next to the pill bottle, was a piece of yellow notebook paper. It was crumpled as if it had been squeezed tight in a fist. I pulled it out. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was sharp, angular. Monica's handwriting. I unfolded the paper. There were 3 sentences scrawled in black ink. Do not come back for him until the papers are signed and the house is sold. Tell the police he wandered off at a rest stop and we couldn't find him. He is just a burden now. I read it once, then twice, then a third time. The pain in my chest subsided, replaced by a cold, hard numbness that spread from my gut to my fingertips. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't Jason panicking. This was a plan. A cold, calculated plan orchestrated by my daughter-in-law and executed by my weak, spineless son. They wanted the house. My house. The house I had built with my late wife, Beatrice. The house they had been nagging me to sell for months. Jason had lost his job a year ago, though he thought I didn't know. He had been gambling on cryptocurrency and lost everything. Monica wanted to maintain her lifestyle. They needed capital, and I was the only asset they had left. They had tricked me into this trip. Monica had insisted we go on a family vacation to see the Grand Canyon. "One last big trip for you, Dad," she had said with that saccharine smile, "before you get too old to travel." And this morning, just before we left, Jason had handed me a stack of papers. Just insurance forms for the trip, Dad. In case of emergency. You know how expensive hospitals are. I had signed them without reading. I trusted him. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. Those weren't insurance forms. That was a power of attorney. I had just signed away the rights to my property, my finances, my life. They were going to sell the house while I was missing. They would claim I was senile, that I wandered off into the desert. If I died out here, even better. If I survived and found my way back, the house would already be sold, the money moved, and they would put me in a state-run nursing home for the indigent. They thought they had won. They thought they had outsmarted the old man. I looked at my reflection in the side of the metal trash can. I looked pathetic. A 70-year-old man in a stained polo shirt, sweating covered in dust, sitting next to garbage. But they made one fatal mistake. A mistake that was going to cost them everything. They thought I was Harold King, the retired mechanic who fixed transmissions for 40 years and saved every penny in a coffee can. That was the story I had told them. That was the life I had shown them. I drove a 2005 sedan. I clipped coupons. I complained about the price of electricity. I did that to teach Jason the value of $1. I did that because I wanted him to be a man, not a trust fund baby. They didn't know who I really was. They didn't know about the geological surveys I conducted in the 80s. They didn't know about the land rights I purchased for pennies on the dollar in regions everyone else thought were barren. They didn't know that the coffee can money was just my petty cash. They didn't know that Harold King was the silent owner of one of the largest untapped lithium deposits in the state of Nevada. I stood up. My knees cracked, but my legs were steady. The dizziness was gone. The heat didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt like fuel. I looked at the crumpled note in my hand one last time. He is just a burden now. I carefully folded the note and placed it in my pocket. I picked up my medicine bag. I wiped the dirt off my pants. I walked back toward the gas station. The cashier was still on his phone. He didn't look up when I entered. I need a phone, I said. My voice wasn't raspy anymore. It was low, steel hard. Payphone is outside, Pops. You need quarters. I don't need a payphone, I said. I need your phone. And I need a ride to the nearest private airfield. The kid laughed, finally looking up. You crazy old man, I ain't a taxi service. Get out of here before I call the cops. I reached for my left wrist. I was wearing a watch. It looked like a beat-up old thing with a scratched face and a worn leather strap. Jason had made fun of it for years, telling me to get an Apple Watch. He thought it was junk. I unclasped it and laid it on the counter. This, I said, pointing to the watch, is a Patek Philippe reference 1518. It was a gift from a Saudi prince in 1981 for finding water where his experts said there was only sand. There were only 200 ever made. In this condition, even with the scratches, it is worth about $300,000. The kid stared at the watch, then at me. He didn't know watches, but he knew the tone of a man who wasn't lying. I will give you this watch, I continued, if you let me make one phone call and then drive me to Las Vegas, right now. The kid hesitated. You serious? Do I look like I am joking? He swallowed hard. He looked at the watch, then at his beat-up Honda Civic parked outside. He grabbed his keys. Deal. He handed me his smartphone. I didn't dial the police. I didn't dial my son. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years, a number I had memorized for a doomsday scenario I hoped would never come. It rang twice. Rex Power, a voice answered. It was smooth, sharp, the voice of a man who ate sharks for breakfast. Rex was the most ruthless corporate attorney in New York, a man I had kept on retainer for 30 years. Rex, I said. It's Hal. Initiate the Omega Protocol. There was a pause on the line, a silence that carried the weight of decades. Hal, you haven't used that name in a long time. Omega Protocol, that's the nuclear option. That destroys everything. Are you sure? I looked out the window at the empty spot where my son's car had been. I felt the note in my pocket burning against my leg. I am sure, I said. They crossed the line. They abandoned me, Rex. They left me to die to sell the house. Understood, Rex said. His voice shifted from surprised to lethal. I will freeze the assets immediately. I will put a lien on the property within the hour. And Hal, yes. Do you want me to destroy them quietly, or do you want to make a show of it? I looked at the security monitor where my son's car had sped away. I want it loud, Rex, I said. I want the whole world to see it. Get the media ready. I'm coming out of retirement. I hung up the phone and turned to the kid. Let's go. We have a lot of work to do. As we drove away from that gas station, leaving the dust and the heat behind, I didn't look back. The sad, lonely father who wanted to be loved by his son died back there at Pump 4. The man sitting in the passenger seat now was the titan of industry who had buried competitors far smarter and tougher than Jason and Monica. They wanted my money. Fine. I was going to give them a lesson in economics they would never survive. The air conditioning inside the convenience store felt like a physical slap against my sunburned skin, instantly chilling the sweat that had soaked through my shirt. I stood by the glass door for a moment, steadying myself against the metal frame, trying to stop the tremors in my hands. The young cashier, whose name tag read Kyle, didn't even glance up from his phone. To him, I was just another piece of debris blown in from the highway, a nuisance that would eventually leave if ignored long enough. But I wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. I walked to the counter, my steps heavy and deliberate. The linoleum floor was sticky, making a sucking sound with every footfall. I placed my hands on the Formica surface. They were dirty, stained with the grime from the trash can, where I had just retrieved my life. I need your phone, I said. My voice was low, rasping from dehydration, but I pushed as much steel into it as I could muster. Kyle sighed, a long, exaggerated exhalation of teenage boredom. He tapped his screen one last time before looking up with eyes deadened by a minimum wage existence. I told you, Pops. Payphone is outside. If you don't have quarters, that sounds like a personal problem. I don't have quarters, I said, leaning forward. I don't have a wallet. I don't have a credit card. My son just stole everything I own and left me to die in your parking lot. Now I need your phone and I need a ride to the nearest city. The kid laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. You want a ride? I look like Uber to you. Get out before I call the sheriff. You're scaring the customers. I looked around. The only other customer was a trucker buying beef jerky who was studiously ignoring us. I was alone. I had zero leverage. I was a 70-year-old man in dirty clothes with a heart condition standing in a gas station that smelled of stale hot dogs and indifference. But I had one thing left. I reached for my left wrist. The leather strap was worn dark with age and sweat. The crystal face of the watch was scratched a spiderweb of tiny imperfections that caught the fluorescent lights overhead. To the untrained eye, it looked like something you would find in a bargain bin at a yard sale for $5. Jason had told me to throw it away a dozen times. He said it was embarrassing. He said I should get a smartwatch like a normal person. I unclasped the buckle. My fingers were stiff, but I managed to slide the leather through the loop. The watch felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it should be. It carried the weight of a different life. I remembered the heat of the empty quarter in 1980. It was hotter than this Nevada sun. We had been drilling for 6 months, chasing a geological anomaly that everyone said was a ghost. The crew was on the verge of mutiny. The equipment was failing. But I knew the strata. I knew the rock. When the drill finally hit the pocket, it wasn't oil that came up first, it was water. Sweet, ancient aquifer water in the middle of the Saudi desert. The oil came later, billions of dollars of it. But the prince, a man who had seen everything money could buy, wept for the water. He took this watch off his own wrist and handed it to me. "For the man who sees what others cannot," he had said. Patek Philippe. Reference 1518. Perpetual calendar chronograph. The first of its kind produced in series. A masterpiece of engineering hidden inside a simple steel case. I slammed the watch down on the counter. The sound cracked through the store, sharp and metallic. Kyle flinched. He looked at the watch, then at me, his lip curling in a sneer. "What is this? You trying to barter with me? I don't want your old junk." "Look at it," I commanded. My voice wasn't the voice of a retired grandfather anymore. It was the voice of the site foreman who had commanded 500 men on the North Sea rigs. It was the voice that made structural engineers double-check their math. "Look at the name on the dial." Kyle looked. He squinted. "Patek Philippe," he read, stumbling over the pronunciation. "So what is this, a knockoff?" "It is not a knockoff," I said, staring into his eyes, willing him to see the truth. "This watch is worth more than this entire gas station. It is worth more than your car. It is worth more than every year of salary you will earn for the next decade." The kid hesitated. Greed is a universal language, and he was starting to hear its whisper. He picked up the watch. He turned it over. He felt the weight of the movement inside the dense, rhythmic heartbeat of the gears. It didn't feel like plastic. It didn't feel cheap. "Google it," I said. Reference 1518. Steel. He put the watch down, keeping one hand on it as if afraid I would snatch it back, and pulled out his phone with the other. His thumbs flew across the screen. I waited. The seconds ticked by, synchronized with the pulse in my neck. I needed water. I needed my lawyer. But first I needed this kid to understand the transaction. His eyes went wide. He looked from his phone screen to the watch, then back to the screen. He scrolled down. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. 300,000, he whispered. His voice cracked. "No way. This thing is scratched. It looks like trash." "The scratches are from a sandstorm in Riyadh and a rig explosion in the Gulf of Mexico," I said calmly. "They are provenance. They prove it is real. And it is yours." He looked at me, his face pale. Mine, I leaned in closer. The smell of his cheap body spray was overpowering, but I didn't flinch. "I will walk out of here and leave that watch on this counter. It is yours. You can sell it. You can wear it. You can smash it with a hammer. I don't care. But in exchange, you are going to give me your phone to make one call, a private call. And then you are going to close this store, put a sign on the door, and drive me to the private airfield outside Las Vegas." He looked around the empty store. He looked at the security camera in the corner. "I don't care about the job," I said, reading his mind. "You sell that watch, you never have to work a shift like this again." He looked at the watch again. The lust in his eyes was naked now. He was doing the math. He was realizing that this dirty old man was offering him a winning lottery ticket. "And $50, I added. What, he snapped his head, jerking up. "I need $50 cash. For water. For food. I have nothing." He hesitated for a split second, then reached into his own pocket. He pulled out a crumpled wad of bills, tips probably, and counted out 3 20s. He slapped them on the counter next to the watch. "Keep the change," he muttered, his voice trembling with adrenaline. He unlocked his phone and slid it across the formica. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. The deal was done. I had just traded a piece of my history, a symbol of my greatest professional triumph, to a boy who couldn't even spell the name on the dial. But it didn't matter. The watch was the past. I was fighting for my future. I dialed the number. As I waited for the connection, I watched Kyle flip the sign on the door to close and lock it. He was moving fast, afraid I would change my mind, afraid the dream would evaporate. He didn't know that for me, the watch was a cheap price to pay. I wasn't just buying a ride. I was buying a war. And as the line clicked open, and I heard the dial tone shift to a ringing sound, I knew that the man who had walked into this gas station, the victim, the abandoned father, was gone. The man holding the phone was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. "Rex," I said when the line picked up. "We have work to do." Kyle stood by the door, jangling his car keys, staring at the watch in his hand, as if it were a religious artifact. He had no idea he was now the chauffeur for the most vengeful man in Nevada. I took the bottle of water from the cooler, cracked the seal, and drank. The water was cold. It tasted like life. It tasted like retribution. "Let's go," I told him. "Drive fast. My family thinks I'm dead, and I don't want to keep them waiting." The phone pressed against my ear was hot, but the voice on the other end was cold as ice. Rex Power did not do small talk. He did not ask how the weather was. He was the kind of lawyer who charged $2,000 an hour because he knew how to bury bodies legally. I had not spoken to him in a decade, not since I liquidated the Venezuelan assets and went underground to live my simple, quiet life. But the moment he heard my voice, the old machinery clicked back into gear. "Talk to me," Hal, Rex said. His voice was crystal clear, cutting through the static of the desert signal. "I have the file open. I am looking at your living trust. I am looking at the shell companies. Everything is dormant just like you left it. Why are we waking the dragon? They left me at a gas station." "Rex," I said. "My son." He drove away. There was a silence on the line, a pause that was heavier than the humid air in the car. Kyle, the kid driving the Honda, glanced at me sideways, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He was driving 90 miles an hour down the interstate, the engine of his little car screaming in protest, but he didn't dare slow down. He had heard the tone of my voice. He knew he was involved in something that was way above his pay grade. "Abandoned you?" Rex asked. "You mean he forgot you?" "No," I said. "I mean he tricked me into signing a power of attorney disguised as travel insurance documents this morning. He drove me 300 miles into the desert. He waited until I went to the bathroom, and then he left. I found a note in the trash can, Rex. He thinks I am senile. He thinks I am a burden. He is going to sell the house." I heard the sound of typing on the other end. Fast, aggressive typing. Rex was moving. "Give me a second, Hal," he muttered. "I am accessing the Clark County Clerk's digital registry. If he has a power of attorney, he needs to file it to make it actionable for real estate. If he is smart, he would wait until Monday. If he is desperate—" The typing stopped abruptly. "Damn," Rex whispered. What I asked. The knot in my stomach tightened. "He is desperate, Hal." He didn't wait. The document was electronically filed 45 minutes ago. They must have scanned it in the car. It is in the system. And Hal, yes, there is a pending transaction. A notice of sale. It was flagged because of the speed. Usually these things take days. This was pushed through with an expeditor fee. They aren't just selling the house, Hal. They are dumping it. They listed it for $300,000. My vision blurred for a second. $300,000. The house was appraised at $650,000 last year. It was the house where I held my wife's hand while she took her last breath. It was the house where I built the crib for the granddaughter who was now conspiring to erase me. "They are fire-selling my life," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "They have a buyer lined up." Rex continued, his voice reading the data like a ticker tape. "Cash offer. Looks like a hard money lender. A shark named Vinnie Moretti. He buys distressed properties from desperate drug addicts and gamblers for pennies on the dollar. They are closing in 48 hours, Hal. They want the cash fast." I looked out the window. The desert was a blur of brown and gray. I saw a coyote running in the distance, lonely and hungry. I felt a kinship with it. Stop them, I said. My instinct was to fight to protect my territory. File an injunction. Freeze the title. Call the police and report the car stolen. Report me kidnapped. I waited for Rex to agree. I waited for him to tell me he would unleash the hounds of hell and shut this down before the ink was dry. But Rex was silent. Hal, he said slowly, listen to me. I can stop this right now. I can make one phone call to the county clerk and flag the deed as fraudulent. I can have the sheriff waiting for Jason when he pulls into his driveway. Do it, I said. But if I do that, Rex said, his voice dropping an octave, if I do that, you get your house back. And that is it. Jason will claim it was a misunderstanding. He will say he thought you wanted to sell. He will say he got confused about the price. He will play the loving son who made a bad business decision. He won't go to prison, Hal. He will get a slap on the wrist. He will cry, he will apologize, and he will be back in your guest room in a month, waiting for you to die of natural causes so he can try again. I stayed silent. The air in the car felt very thin. Is that what you want? Rex asked. Do you want to save the house or do you want to end this? I looked at my hands. They were calloused, stained with oil and dirt. These hands had built pipelines in Alaska. They had dug wells in Sudan. They had strangled a man in self-defense in a bar in Maracaibo in 1979. They were not the hands of a victim. I don't want to save the house, I said. The house is just wood and brick. Beatrice is gone. The memories are in my head, not in the drywall. Then what do you want? Rex asked. I want to destroy him, I said. The words tasted like copper. I want him to feel what I felt standing in that parking lot. I want him to feel the panic. I want him to feel the emptiness. I want to take away the one thing he loves more than his own father. Money, Rex said. Exactly. Then we do not stop the sale, Rex said. We let it happen. Kyle, the driver, turned his head so fast, the car swerved slightly into the breakdown lane. He corrected it, his eyes wide in the rearview mirror. He was listening to every word. Explain, I said to Rex. If we stop the sale now, it is attempted fraud, Rex said. It is a civil matter. But if we let him sign the papers, if we let him accept the wire transfer from Moretti, if he touches that money, Hal, even $1 of it, it becomes wire fraud. It becomes elder abuse. It becomes grand larceny over $100,000. That is a mandatory 10-year sentence in federal prison. No parole. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. 10 years. My son in a cage. And the house I asked. We will lose the house temporarily, Rex said. Moretti will take possession. But once the criminal charges drop, we can claw it back. It will be messy. But it will be the bait. You have to let him eat the bait, Hal. You have to let him think he won. I closed my eyes. I saw Jason's face as he drove away. I saw Monica throwing my medicine in the trash. Let him sell it, I said. Let him take the money. Good, Rex said. Now about the Omega Protocol. You mentioned it. Do you remember what that entails? I remember, I said. It means we lock down the real assets, Rex said. I am initiating the firewall on the offshore accounts in the Caymans and the Isle of Man. I am putting the mineral rights for the lithium deposit into a blind trust managed by the firm. To the world, Harold King will look like a ghost. Your credit cards will stop working. Your bank accounts will show zero balances. You will be invisible, but you will have access to the emergency fund through the firm. How much is in the emergency fund? I asked. $2 million in liquid cash, Rex said. Accessible via the black card I issued you 10 years ago. Do you still have it? I patted my chest pocket. It was sewn into the lining of my jacket, a small, hard rectangle I hadn't touched since the funeral. I have it. Good. Now listen carefully, Hal. The Omega Protocol has a secondary function. It triggers a wealth audit. It means that within 24 hours, anyone looking for you is going to find out that Harold King isn't a retired mechanic. The privacy shield drops. If Jason runs a credit check on you tomorrow, he is going to see the shell companies. He won't be able to touch the money, but he will see the size of the mountain he is standing on. Let him see, I said. I want him to know what he threw away. I want him to know that he traded an empire for a used car and a vacation. There is one more thing, Rex said. His voice was hesitant for the first time. What if we do this? There is no going back. You are declaring war on your own blood. You are going to put your granddaughter's father in prison. You are going to leave that girl without a home. Are you sure, Hal? Are you absolutely sure this isn't just the heat talking? I looked at Kyle. He was staring at the road, his jaw set. He was a stranger, a kid who worked for minimum wage, and yet he had shown me more humanity in 20 minutes than my family had shown me in 20 years. He had given me water. He had given me a ride. My family didn't just leave me, Rex, I said. They sentenced me to death. If I hadn't found those pills, if I hadn't found this kid, I would be a corpse by sundown. They didn't care about my blood. Why should I care about theirs? Understood, Rex said. The hesitation was gone. The shark was back. I am executing the protocol now. The assets are freezing as we speak. I am alerting the private security team in Las Vegas. They will meet you at the airfield. Where are you going to stay? I need a base of operations, I said. Somewhere visible, somewhere loud. Jason thinks I am a confused old man wandering the desert. I want to be the exact opposite. The Bellagio, Rex suggested. Bigger, I said. The win better. Get me the Emperor Suite at the Caesar's Palace, the one with the private elevator. And Rex, yes. I need clothes. I look like a hobo. Send a tailor to the suite. And a barber. If I'm going to destroy my family, I want to look like the man who earned the money, not the man who lost it. Consider it done, Rex said. Welcome back to the game, Mr. King. The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was steady. The tremors were gone. The adrenaline was pumping through my veins, clearing the fog of age and betrayal. Kyle let out a low whistle. He kept his eyes on the road, but he shook his head slowly. Omega Protocol, he asked. Freezing assets. 800 million. Who are you, man? You said you were a mechanic. I was a mechanic, I said. I fixed broken things. But sometimes some things are too broken to fix. Sometimes you have to scrap the parts and melt down the steel. He glanced at the Patek Philippe watch sitting on the dashboard. He had taken it off the counter and put it there, treating it with a new reverence. So you are rich, he said. Like really rich. I looked at the endless stretch of sand outside. Money is just a tool, Kyle. It is a hammer. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to break a kneecap. My son tried to use it to bury me. Now I am going to show him how to use the hammer. We drove in silence for a few miles. The skyline of Las Vegas began to shimmer in the distance, a mirage of glass and neon rising out of the dust. It looked like a battlefield. You know, Kyle said, breaking the silence. My dad left when I was 5. Went out for cigarettes and never came back. I used to hate him. I used to wish he would die. I looked at the kid. He was gripping the wheel tight. But now he continued. Now I think, at least he just left. He didn't try to trick me. He didn't try to steal my piggy bank. What your son did, that is cold, man. That is ice cold. It is, I agreed. So are you going to kill him? Kyle asked. He asked it casually, like he was asking if I wanted to stop for lunch. I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. No, Kyle. Death is too easy. Death is a release. I am going to let him live. I am going to let him watch as I take away everything he thought was his. I am going to let him see the paradise he could have had, and then I am going to lock the gates from the inside. We hit the city limits. The traffic thickened. The lights got brighter. Take me to the private terminal at Henderson, I said. My lawyer's team will be waiting. And Kyle? Yeah. When you sell that watch, don't buy a fast car. Don't buy stupid things. Buy a house. Buy an education. Be smarter than my son. I will, Kyle said. He looked at me and for the first time he smiled. A real smile. Thanks, Mr. King. Don't thank me yet, I said. The show is just starting. As we pulled into the airfield, I saw them. 2 black SUVs were parked on the tarmac, next to a sleek Gulfstream jet. Men in suits were waiting. Rex didn't do things halfway. I opened the door of the Honda. The heat of the tarmac rose up to meet me, but this time I didn't flinch. I stepped out, not as the abandoned father, but as the CEO. I straightened my dirty spine. I lifted my chin. My son had started a fire. He didn't know that I was the one who controlled the oxygen. And I was about to suck it all out of the room. Back at the house that I had built with my own hands 30 years ago, the silence was heavy, thick enough to choke on. The black Ford Expedition pulled into the driveway, the tires crunching over the gravel, in a rhythm that sounded too loud in the quiet suburban afternoon. The engine ticked as it cooled a metallic heartbeat that seemed to mock the 2 people sitting inside. Jason gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his skin pale and clammy. He was sweating a cold, greasy sheen that coated his forehead, despite the air conditioning blasting at full power. He stared at the garage door, at the basketball hoop he hadn't used in 20 years, at the rose bushes his mother had planted before she died. He wasn't seeing the house. He was seeing the rearview mirror. He was seeing the image of his father shrinking into a speck of dust in the Nevada desert. He killed the engine, but he didn't move. His breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. "We have to go back," Jason whispered. His voice was trembling, barely audible over the ringing in his ears. "Monica, we have to go back. We can't do this. He is going to die out there. It is 100 degrees. He doesn't have his pills." In the passenger seat, Monica was already unbuckling her seatbelt. She moved with a calm, terrifying precision. She checked her reflection in the visor mirror, smoothing a stray lock of blonde hair, inspecting her mascara. She didn't look like a woman who had just committed a felony. She didn't look like a murderer. She looked like she was preparing for a parent-teacher conference. She snapped the visor shut and turned to look at her husband. Her eyes were dry. Her pulse was steady. "We are not going back." "Jason," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion other than mild annoyance. "We discussed this. We agreed on this. It is done." "But he is my dad," Jason choked out. A tear leaked from his eye, tracking through the sweat on his cheek. "He isn't just some dog we dropped off at a shelter. He is a human being. What if the police find him? What if cameras saw us?" Monica laughed. It was a short, sharp sound like glass breaking. "There were no cameras at that pump, Jason. I checked. And even if there were, we didn't do anything illegal. We stopped for gas. He wandered off. We looked for him. We couldn't find him. It is a tragedy. It is the sad, inevitable decline of a confused old man." She reached over and placed a hand on his arm. Her nails dug into his flesh through his shirt, sharp and painful. "Think about the debt, Jason. Think about the crypto account. Think about Vinnie Moretti and what he said he would do to your knees if you didn't have his $50,000 by Friday. Do you think Vinnie cares about your dad? Do you think Vinnie cares about your guilt?" Jason flinched. The name of the loan shark sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through his stomach. He was trapped. He was caught between the ghost of his father and the very real, very violent threat of his creditors. "We sell the house," Monica hissed, leaning closer, her perfume filling the cab, smelling of vanilla and rot. We sell the house this week. We pay Vinny. We pay off the credit cards. We take the rest, and we move to Arizona. We start over. But none of that happens if you crack. None of that happens if you go soft on me now. Jason looked at the house again. He imagined the cool, dark interior. He imagined his father's chair in the living room empty. "I can't do it," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "I can't call the police. I can't lie to them. They will know. They will look at me and they will know." Monica stared at him for a long moment. Disgust rippled across her face. She hated his weakness. She hated that she had to be the one to carry the weight of their ambition while he crumbled like wet cardboard. She opened her door and walked around to the driver's side. She opened Jason's door. The heat of the afternoon rushed in, smelling of cut grass and normalcy. "Get out of the car," she ordered. Jason stumbled out, his legs shaking so bad he almost fell. He looked at her, his eyes red and swollen, a portrait of pathetic remorse. "Monica, please," he begged. "Let's just call the station. Maybe he is still there." And then she moved. It was fast, efficient, and brutal. Monica pulled her hand back and slapped Jason across the face with every ounce of strength she possessed. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet neighborhood. Jason's head snapped to the side. He stumbled back against the car, his hand flying to his cheek, where a red handprint was already beginning to bloom. The shock of the blow cut through his panic, silencing his sobbing instantly. He stared at his wife, eyes wide, mouth open. "Stop it," Monica snarled. Her face was inches from his, her eyes blazing with a cold, predatory fire. "You are not a child. You are a man who made a choice. Now stand up straight, wipe your face, and get inside that house. We have a performance to give, and if you mess this up, if you stutter, if you hesitate, I will leave you to rot in prison alone." "Do you understand me?" Jason nodded slowly, the sting on his cheek grounding him, pulling him out of the spiral. The fear of his wife suddenly outweighed the fear of his crime. "Good," Monica said, smoothing her dress. "Now listen to me." We waited 3 hours. We searched the rest stop. We searched the woods behind the gas station. You were frantic. I was terrified. We drove up and down the highway. That is the truth. That is the only truth that exists. Now go inside and call 911. They entered the house. It smelled of lemon polish and old paper, the scent of Harold. Monica went straight to the kitchen. She grabbed a glass of water and splashed some on her face, ruining her mascara just enough to look like she had been crying for hours. She messed up her hair, pulling a few strands loose from her perfect bun. She looked in the hallway mirror and practiced a tremble in her lower lip. Within seconds, the cold, calculating woman vanished, replaced by a distraught, terrified daughter-in-law. Jason sat on the sofa, the phone in his hand. He looked at the keypad. His thumb hovered over the 9. "Do it," Monica whispered from the doorway. He dialed. 9 1 1. "Dispatcher, what is your emergency?" the voice on the line asked. Jason closed his eyes. He thought of the desert. He thought of the heat. He thought of the money. "My father," he stammered, and this time the break in his voice wasn't acting. It was pure, distilled self-loathing. "My father is missing. We lost him." 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up to the curb. Officer Miller, a local cop with a kind face and a notebook that had seen better days, walked up the path. He had responded to a noise complaint at this house 2 years ago. He knew the family. He thought they were good people. Monica met him at the door before he could even knock. She threw the door open and practically fell into his arms, sobbing hysterically. "Officer, thank God you are here," she wailed, clutching his uniform sleeve. "We don't know what to do. We looked everywhere. He just vanished." Officer Miller gently guided her back into the living room. Jason was sitting on the recliner, his head in his hands rocking back and forth. To the untrained eye, he looked like a son paralyzed by grief. To Monica, he looked like a liability she was managing in real time. "Okay, folks, slow down," Officer Miller said, taking out his pen. "Tell me exactly what happened. When did you last see Harold?" Jason looked up. His eyes were hollow. He looked at Monica. She gave him a microscopic nod, a signal only they could see. "We were driving to the canyon," Jason said. His voice was dull, robotic. "We stopped at a rest area off the I-15. About 4 hours ago. Dad said he needed to stretch his legs. He went toward the vending machines. And then Miller asked, writing it down. I went to the bathroom." Jason continued. Monica stayed in the car. "When I came back out, he was gone." "Gone?" Miller asked. "Did you see anyone take him? Did he get into another vehicle?" "No." "No," Monica interjected, blowing her nose into a tissue she had crumpled in her hand. "He just wandered off. He does that sometimes. He gets confused. Lately it has been getting worse. He forgets where he is. He forgets who we are. We tried to get him to see a doctor, but he is so stubborn." She looked at the officer with wide, pleading eyes. "He has dementia, doesn't he?" she whispered, planting the seed. "We didn't want to admit it. We thought we could handle it. But today, he just walked into the desert. We looked for 3 hours, officer. We screamed his name until our voices gave out. But there was nothing. Just sand." Officer Miller nodded sympathetically. The story fit. A hot day, a long drive, an elderly man with cognitive decline. It happened more often than people liked to admit. "Did he have a phone?" Miller asked. "No," Jason said quickly. "He hates technology. He doesn't carry one." "Does he have any money ID?" "Maybe $20, Monica said. "But his wallet? I think he left it in the car. He said it hurt his back to sit on it. So he has no identification, no phone, and he is confused." Miller summarized, his face grim. "Okay. We need to get a description out to the Nevada Highway Patrol immediately. Do you have a recent photo?" Monica jumped up. "I have one on my phone," she said. "I took it this morning before we left." He looked so happy. She pulled up the picture. It was indeed Harold standing in the driveway, smiling, holding his travel bag. The bag that was currently rotting in a dumpster 300 miles away. "He looks frail," Monica added, manipulating the narrative. "He needs his heart medication. If he doesn't take it..." She let the sentence hang in the air, implying the fatal consequence without saying it. Officer Miller radioed it in. He put out an APB for a silver alert. Confused elderly male 70 years old wandering near the interstate. Potential medical emergency. As he spoke into his radio, Jason watched him. He felt a wave of dizziness. It was so easy. It was terrifyingly easy. They were lying to the police, and the police were believing them. They were rewriting history in real time. Harold wasn't a sharp, intelligent man who had been abandoned. He was now a confused, sick invalid who had wandered off to die. Officer Miller closed his notebook. "I am going to file this report right now. We will coordinate with the Nevada search and rescue teams. You two should stay here in case he calls the house landline or finds a way to contact you. Try to get some rest. You look exhausted." "We can't rest," Monica sobbed. "Not until Dad is home." Officer Miller patted her shoulder awkwardly. "We will do everything we can, ma'am." He walked out the door. Jason watched him get into the cruiser and drive away. The moment the taillights disappeared around the corner, the energy in the room shifted violently. Monica dropped the tissue. She stopped crying instantly. Her posture straightened. She walked to the window and peeked through the blinds to make sure the street was empty. She turned to Jason. Her eyes were dry and hard as flint. "He bought it," she said. "He bought every word." Jason stared at her, horrified by the transformation. You You are terrifying. I am practical, she snapped. Now get up. We have work to do. We need to call the realtor. We need to tell him that due to the medical emergency, we need to liquidate the asset immediately to pay for the search and rescue costs. That is our cover story. We aren't selling because we are greedy. We are selling because we are desperate to save him. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Jason sat there, the phantom sting of her slap still burning on his cheek. He looked at the empty spot where his father's recliner sat. He realized then that he hadn't just lost his father. He had lost himself. He was trapped in this house with a woman who could turn tears on and off like a faucet, and for the first time in his life, he was truly afraid of her. Hello, Monica said into the phone, her voice pitching up into a worried, frantic tone again. Yes, this is Monica King. We have a family emergency. We need to list the house. Yes, today. Cash offers only. We need the money fast. It is a matter of life and death. She looked at Jason and winked. Jason felt the bile rise in his throat. He ran to the bathroom and threw up. The cruiser turned the corner and vanished, and the heavy silence of the house came rushing back in like a floodwater. It was a silence that screamed. Monica did not waste a single second. She turned from the window, her face stripping off the mask of the grieving daughter-in-law, so fast it was almost jarring. There were no tears on her cheeks, only the flush of adrenaline and the cold, hard set of a woman who had a deadline. Jason stood in the middle of the living room, staring at his father's empty recliner. The indent of Harold's body was still visible in the cushion. The ghost of the man was sitting right there judging him. Jason felt sick. He felt the bile rising in his throat again, a burning reminder of the line he had just crossed. He had lied to the police. He had filed a false report. There was no going back now. The bridge wasn't just burned, it was detonated. Upstairs, Monica barked. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the stagnant air. Now! Jason flinched. He looked at her, his eyes pleading for a moment of rest, a moment to process the enormity of what they had done. But Monica was already moving toward the staircase, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor with a military rhythm. We have a 2-hour window before the neighbors start coming over with casseroles and fake sympathy, she hissed over her shoulder. We need to find the cash. We need to find the gold. Your dad said he had savings. He said he kept it safe. Jason stumbled after her, his legs feeling like lead. He remembered the stories. Harold always talked about the rainy day fund. He talked about how banks were for fools and how hard assets were the only thing that mattered. Jason had imagined stacks of bills. He had imagined gold coins. He had imagined the solution to all his problems sitting in a metal box in the master bedroom closet. They entered Harold's bedroom. It smelled of Old Spice and dust. The bed was made with military precision, the corners tucked tight. It was the room of a man who lived a disciplined, simple life. To Jason, it suddenly looked like a tomb. Monica went straight to the walk-in closet. She shoved Harold's suits aside, the hangers clattering loudly. There, pushed into the back corner under a pile of old blankets, was the safe. It was an old iron beast, a relic from the 70s, covered in scratches and stickers from oil companies Jason didn't recognize. It looked impenetrable. Do you have the combination? Monica asked, kneeling in front of it. Her eyes were wide with greed. She ran her hands over the cold metal as if caressing a lover. No, Jason whispered. He never told me. He said I would get it when I was ready. Monica let out a sound of pure frustration. Well, you are ready now, Jason, because we are taking it. She stood up and looked around the room. Her eyes landed on the heavy toolbox Harold kept under the window. She dragged it out, the metal scraping across the floor. She threw it open and pulled out a heavy crowbar and a sledgehammer. Open it, she ordered. Jason looked at the tools. This felt like a violation worse than the abandonment. Leaving his father at a gas station was passive. This was active. This was breaking into the heart of the man's life. I can't, Jason said. It feels... Do you want Vinnie Moretti to break your legs? Monica screamed. She was losing control. The pressure was getting to her. Do you want to lose the kids? Open the damn safe, Jason. The fear of the loan shark was a powerful motivator. Jason grabbed the sledgehammer. He swung. The sound of metal on metal was deafening in the small room. He swung again, and again. The dial of the safe smashed inward. He jammed the crowbar into the gap between the door and the frame. He put his weight into it. He grunted sweat pouring down his face, mixing with the tears he couldn't stop. Monica helped him, pulling on the bar, her face twisted into a mask of exertion. Give it to me, she grunted. Give it to me. With a final screeching groan of tortured metal, the door of the safe popped open. They both fell back, panting. The room was silent again, save for their ragged breathing. Monica scrambled forward on her hands and knees. She reached into the dark cavity of the safe. This was it. The salvation. The crypto debts, the credit cards, the loan shark, it all ended right here. She pulled out the contents and froze. There were no stacks of $100 bills. There were no gold Krugerrands. There were no jewelry boxes filled with diamonds. The safe was almost empty. Monica pulled out a single thick manila envelope and a small rusted tin box that used to hold biscuits. She shook the tin box. It rattled. It sounded light. Too light. She ripped the lid off. Inside were exactly $43 in loose change and small bills, a few old buttons and a war medal from Korea. She stared at the coins. $43. Is this a joke? She whispered. Her voice was trembling with a dangerous rage. Is this some kind of sick joke? She grabbed the manila envelope. This had to be it. The bonds, the stock certificates, the real money. She tore the top off the envelope and dumped the contents onto the floor. A single folded piece of paper fell out. It was large, yellowed with age, and smelled of musty archives. Monica unfolded it frantically. Her eyes scanned the paper, looking for numbers, looking for bank routing codes, looking for value. But it wasn't a bank statement. It wasn't a bond. It was a map. It was a hand-drawn topographical map of a section of the Nevada desert, specifically a region Jason vaguely recognized as being near the old mining districts. It was covered in strange symbols, geological notations, and red ink circles. In the bottom corner, in Harold's neat block handwriting, it read, Survey 1982, Sector 7G, Lithium concentration high grade. Clipped to the map was a handwritten note. Jason picked up the note. His hands were shaking so hard, he could barely read it. For Jason, the note read, For the day you grow up and realize that the real treasure isn't what you spend, but what you build. This is the future, son. Use it wisely. Jason looked at the map. He saw lines. He saw dirt. He saw nothing. He didn't know what lithium was worth. He didn't know that the electric vehicle revolution was making that specific mineral more valuable than gold. He didn't know that the red circle on that paper represented a deposit worth $850 million. He just saw paper. Monica snatched the map from his hands. She stared at it. She turned it over. She shook it, hoping a check would fall out. Nothing. It's a map, she screamed. It's a map of dirt. He left us dirt. She stood up, her face red veins bulging in her neck. She looked around the room, as if searching for something to destroy. He lied to us, she shrieked. He walked around like he had a secret fortune. He let us believe he was sitting on a pile of cash. And it was this, a drawing of the desert. She looked at the map in her hands with pure hatred. To her, it represented every disappointment, every failure, every lie she felt she had been told. It was trash. It was the delusion of a senile old man who thought his rock collection was valuable. She grabbed the paper with both hands. Monica, wait, Jason said weakly. Maybe it means something. It means he was crazy, she yelled. It means he was a hoarder who kept trash in a safe. And then with a violent tearing sound, she ripped the map in half. Jason flinched, but he didn't stop her. She ripped it again and again. She tore the $1 million survey into confetti. She tore the coordinates into shreds. She threw the pieces into the air, letting them rain down on the carpet like worthless snow. "There goes your inheritance, Jason," she spat, stomping on the pieces with her heels. "There goes your father's great legacy. Dirt and paper and lies." She kicked the rusted tin box, sending the coins scattering across the room. "We killed him for $40, Jason," she whispered, the rage suddenly turning into a cold, terrifying clarity. "We abandoned him for $40. Jason sat on the floor, surrounded by the debris of his father's life. He picked up a piece of the torn map. It just showed a contour line. Useless. "We are dead," Jason whispered. "Vinny is going to kill us." Monica stopped pacing. She took a deep breath. She smoothed her hair. The predator was back. "No," she said. "We are not dead. We just have to pivot. The cash isn't in the safe." "Fine." She walked to the window and looked out at the front lawn. She looked at the neighborhood. "The cash is in the walls," she said. "The cash is the house, but—" Jason started. "We sell it," Monica said, turning to him. "We don't wait for a market listing. We don't wait for open houses. We sell it today. But we need time to clear the title." "We don't have time," Monica snapped. "We call the cash buyers the sharks. The ones who put those 'We buy ugly houses' signs on the telephone poles. We call the investors who don't ask questions." She pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen. "I am calling that guy your friend told us about. The one who buys distressed assets. What was his name, Snyder? He pays 50 cents on the dollar," Monica, Jason said, horrified. "We will lose half the value. Half of something is better than all of nothing," she screamed. "We need 50,000 by Friday. If we sell the house for 300,000 cash today, we pay Vinny, we pay the credit cards, and we still have enough to leave." She dialed the number. Jason looked at the torn paper on the floor. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. A heaviness. He didn't know he was looking at the debris of a fortune that could have made him a king. He just saw trash. "Hello," Monica said into the phone, her voice shifting instantly into a businesslike, urgent tone. "Yes, I am looking for Mr. Snyder. My name is Monica King. I have a property in the Henderson suburbs. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, pristine condition. I need to sell it today." "Yes, today. Cash. I am willing to take a significant discount for speed." She listened for a moment, then nodded. 300, yes. We will take it. When can you bring the contract? Tonight. Perfect. She hung up the phone. She looked at Jason. "It is done," she said. "Someone is coming in an hour with a briefcase of cash for the deposit and a contract. We are selling the house." She walked over to the mess on the floor. She kicked the pieces of the map into a pile. "Clean this up," she ordered. "Get a garbage bag. Throw all of this junk away. The old man's clothes, his papers, this stupid map. I want this room empty before the buyer gets here. I don't want any trace of him left." Jason stood up. He walked to the kitchen and got a black trash bag. He came back and started scooping up the torn pieces of the map. He scooped up the survey data that had taken Harold 10 years to compile. He scooped up the geological proof of the lithium deposit. He threw $850 million into a trash bag, along with the dust bunnies and the old receipts. He tied the bag shut. "I'll put it in the bin outside," he said softly. "Good," Monica said. "And Jason?" "Yeah. Don't look so sad. We just saved our lives. We are going to be rich, just not the way your dad planned." Jason walked out the back door. He lifted the lid of the wheelie bin. The smell of rotting garbage wafted up. He threw the bag in. It landed with a soft thud. He stood there for a moment looking at the black plastic. He didn't know why, but he felt like he had just thrown away his soul. He closed the lid. Inside the house, the phone rang. Monica answered it. It was the realtor, the shark, confirming the address. They were doing it. They were selling the house. They were erasing Harold King from the earth. And they had no idea that 300 miles away, Harold King was sitting in a tailor's chair in a penthouse suite, watching a digital feed of his home security system on a tablet, watching his son throw the map away, and smiling a smile that would have terrified a wolf. "You tore up the map," Jason Harold whispered to the screen. "That was your test, and you failed. Now let's see how you handle the eviction." The doorbell rang at exactly 8 o'clock, and the sound echoed through the empty hallway like a gavel striking a judge's bench. Jason jumped, his nerves so frayed that the noise almost sent him out of his skin. He looked at Monica. She was standing by the kitchen island, reapplying her lipstick in the reflection of the toaster. She looked composed, cold, and ready. She nodded at the door. "Let him in," she whispered. "And remember, we are grieving. We are desperate. But we are not stupid." Jason walked to the door. His hands were damp. He wiped them on his pants before turning the lock. He opened the door to the humid Nevada night. Standing on the porch was a man who looked like he was made of gristle and cheap cologne. He wore a suit that was too shiny and a smile that had too many teeth. He held a black leather briefcase in one hand and a lit cigarette in the other, flicking the ash onto Harold's welcome mat without a second thought. "Mr. Snyder," Jason said, his voice cracking slightly. The man stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The smell of smoke and stale coffee followed him in. He looked around the entryway, his eyes scanning the crown, molding the hardwood floors and the family photos on the wall, as if he were pricing cuts of meat at a butcher shop. "Nice place," Snyder grunted. "Shame about the circumstances. Your wife said on the phone it was a medical emergency. Dad is in the hospital." Jason opened his mouth to lie, but Monica was already there, stepping into the light, with a performance worthy of an award. "It is critical," she said, her voice trembling just enough to be believable. "The treatments are experimental. Insurance won't cover them. We need the liquidity immediately to fly him to a specialist in Zurich." Snyder didn't care about Zurich. He didn't care about the sick father. He cared that he was about to steal a $600,000 asset for half price. He walked to the dining room table and set the briefcase down. The heavy thud of the leather on the wood was the only sound in the room. "I prepared the paperwork," Snyder said, snapping the latches open. "Standard distressed asset contract. I take the title free and clear. You get the cash. I assume you cleared the house of any personal effects you want to keep, because once I sign, the locks get changed tonight." "Tonight?" Jason asked, alarmed. "But we have things upstairs. We can be out in an hour," Monica interrupted, shooting Jason a look that could cut glass. "We just need to pack a few bags." Snyder nodded. He pulled a stack of documents from the briefcase. He laid them out on the table. There were a lot of pages dense with legal jargon about quitclaim deeds and immediate transfer of ownership. "The price is $300,000, Snyder said. $50,000 now as a non-refundable cash deposit. The remaining $250 to be wired to your account within 48 hours upon title clearance." Jason looked at the papers. He saw the number. 300,000. It was robbery. It was a fire sale. But then he looked at the briefcase. Snyder reached in and pulled out 5 thick bundles of $100 bills. They were wrapped in paper bands. They smelled of ink and circulation. He stacked them on the table next to the contract. 50,000, Snyder said. Unmarked. Untraceable, if that is your preference. Jason stared at the money. His heart hammered against his ribs. That stack of paper was his life. It was Vinnie Moretti not breaking his legs. It was the credit card companies stopping the harassing calls. It was freedom. He reached out a hand almost involuntarily. "Sign first," Snyder said, sliding a pen across the table. Jason looked at Monica. She was staring at the money with a hunger that was almost sexual. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated. She gave him a microscopic nod. Jason picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He looked at the line marked seller. He thought of his father. He thought of the man who had bought this house 30 years ago, who had paid the mortgage every month, who had fixed the roof and painted the walls. He was signing away his father's life. "Just do it," Monica hissed under her breath. Jason pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed. He signed his name. He signed as his father's power of attorney. He signed the deed transfer. He signed the waiver of occupancy. With every signature, he felt a piece of his soul wither away, but simultaneously, he felt the crushing weight of his debts lifting. It was a terrible, intoxicating lightness. "Done," Jason whispered, dropping the pen. Snyder checked the signatures. He nodded, satisfied. He closed his folder. "Pleasure doing business with you," Snyder said. He didn't offer a hand to shake. He knew what kind of people he was dealing with. "You have 1 hour. My crew will be here at 10 o'clock to secure the premises. Leave the keys on the counter." He turned and walked out the front door, leaving the cash on the table. The moment the door clicked shut, the atmosphere in the room exploded. Monica lunged for the money. She grabbed a stack of bills and held it to her face, inhaling the scent. "We did it!" she screamed, her voice shrill with hysteria and relief. "We actually did it." Jason slumped into a chair, staring at the cash. 50,000. It is real. Monica began counting it, flipping through the bills with frantic fingers. "It is all here." "Jason, look at this. We are saved. We pay Vinny tomorrow. We pay off the visa, and we still have the wire transfer coming. $250,000. We are rich." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "We need to celebrate," she said. "Celebrate?" Jason asked, confused. "Monica, we just sold my dad's house to a shark. We have an hour to pack our lives into a car." "Forget the packing," she said, sweeping her arm around the room. "Leave it all. It is old junk anyway. The furniture is dated. The clothes are cheap. We don't need any of this. We are going to have $250,000 in 2 days. We can buy everything new." She grabbed Jason's face, forcing him to look at her. "Don't you get it? The nightmare is over. The old man is gone. The debt is gone. We won. We beat the system. We deserve this. We deserve a reward for all the stress we have been under." "The stress?" Jason let out a weak laugh. She was calling the murder of his father stress. But as he looked at her and then back at the money, the horror began to recede, replaced by the same manic energy radiating from his wife. She was right. They had pulled it off. The police believed them. The house was sold. They were free. "What do you want to do?" Jason asked. "I want to get out of this dusty house," Monica said. "I want to go to the Strip. I want to go to the Forum shops at Caesars. I want to buy a dress that costs more than your father's car. I want to eat a steak that costs $500. I want to feel like a winner." Jason hesitated. It felt reckless. It felt insane. But the adrenaline was coursing through him now, a chemical high that drowned out his conscience. "We have the cash," he said. "Exactly." Monica grinned. "We take $5,000 for tonight. We put the rest in the hotel safe. We book a suite at the Bellagio. We live it up, Jason. Just for one night. Before we leave for Arizona." She grabbed a handful of bills and stuffed them into her purse. She ran upstairs, her heels clacking loudly. Jason could hear her throwing things into a suitcase. Not clothes, just jewelry. Her makeup. The things she cared about. He stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the street. It was dark and quiet. The neighbors were asleep, oblivious to the crime that had just been consummated in their midst. "Goodbye, Dad," Jason whispered to the empty glass. He turned back to the table. He grabbed the remaining stacks of cash and shoved them into his pockets. He felt the bulge of the money against his thigh. It felt solid. It felt like power. Monica came running down the stairs 10 minutes later carrying a single overnight bag. She had changed her shoes. She was wearing her best heels. She had reapplied her makeup. She looked electric. "Let's go," she said, grabbing his hand. "The shark will be here soon. I don't want to see his face again." They walked out of the house without looking back. They left the photos on the wall. They left the furniture. They left the life that Harold King had built. They got into the Ford Expedition, the engine roaring to life. As Jason backed out of the driveway, Monica turned up the radio. A pop song blasted through the speakers, drowning out the silence of the desert night. To the Forum Shops, she shouted over the music. Jason stepped on the gas. The car surged forward. They sped toward the lights of Las Vegas, toward the luxury, toward the celebration. They felt invincible. They felt untouchable. They had no idea that every credit card in their wallets was already dead. They had no idea that the Omega Protocol had already flagged the house sale as a fraudulent conveyance. And they certainly had no idea that the man they were going to celebrate killing was currently sitting in a penthouse suite directly above the shopping mall they were driving to, watching their GPS signal move across his tablet screen like a bug in a jar. They were driving straight into the mouth of the wolf, and they were laughing all the way. The Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace was not just a mall, it was a temple built to worship the god of excess, and for two people who had just sold their soul for $300,000, it felt like home. The air was perfumed with a scent that cost more per ounce than gold. The floors were polished marble that reflected the artificial sky painted on the ceiling, a sky that was perpetually blue, perpetually perfect, and completely fake, just like the new life Monica was trying to build. Jason walked a step behind his wife, his hand constantly brushing against the bulge in his jacket pocket, where the $50,000 in cash sat heavy and hot against his ribs. He felt like he was carrying a radioactive isotope. Every time a security guard looked his way, he flinched. Every time a shopper laughed, he thought they were laughing at him, at the man who had abandoned his father in the desert. But Monica walked with the stride of a conqueror. She had changed her shoes in the car, swapping her sensible driving flats for 4-inch stilettos that clicked aggressively against the stone floor. She swung her hips. She tossed her hair. She looked at the window displays of Versace and Louis Vuitton, not with the longing of a suburban housewife, but with the appraisal of a predator who had finally cornered its prey. "We are going to Gucci," she announced, not asking, but commanding. "I want the bag I saw in Vogue, the one with the bamboo handle. It costs $4,000. $4,000, Jason hissed, grabbing her elbow and pulling her slightly out of the flow of tourists. "Monica, that is Vinny's money. We need that to pay off the debt. We talked about this. We spend a little on dinner and a room. Not $4,000 on a purse." Monica ripped her arm away from his grip, her nails digging into his bicep. "Stop acting poor, Jason," she snarled, her voice low and venomous. "We have $250,000 coming in a wire transfer on Monday. Vinny can wait an extra day. Or we pay him $46,000 and tell him the rest is interest. I don't care. I earned this. I did the hard part. I made the call. I drove the car. I deserve the bag." She turned on her heel and marched toward the double glass doors of the Gucci flagship store. Jason stood there for a second, watching her. He saw the madness in her posture, the desperate, frantic need to fill the hole inside her with things. He knew he should stop her. He knew he should drag her back to the car and drive to the loan shark right now. But he was weak. He had always been weak. That was why he was here. So he followed her. The store was quiet, hushed like a library for the ultra-rich. The lighting was soft, designed to make the merchandise glow. A sales associate, a tall woman with severe cheekbones and a black suit that cost more than Jason's car, materialized out of the shadows. She scanned them in a millisecond. She saw Jason's sweat-stained shirt and his nervous eyes. She saw Monica's manic energy. She sniffed the air, seemingly detecting the scent of desperation masked by cheap perfume. "Can I help you?" the associate asked, her tone balancing perfectly between servitude and disdain. Monica lifted her chin. She channeled every ounce of entitlement she had ever felt. "I want the bamboo 1947 top-handle bag," she said, "in crocodile, and I want to see the matching slide sandals, size 7. The associate raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "The crocodile is an exotic skin, ma'am. That piece retails for $32,000. Perhaps the leather version would be more." Monica laughed. It was a loud, harsh sound that made two other customers look up from a display of silk scarves. "Did I ask the price?" she snapped. "I asked to see the bag. Bring it to me. And bring us some champagne. We are celebrating." The associate's eyes hardened, but she nodded. "Of course. Right this way." She led them to a private seating area in the back, plush velvet sofas surrounding a glass table. Monica sat down, crossing her legs, acting the part of the bored heiress. Jason sat on the edge of the cushion, clutching his jacket shut. Within minutes, the associate returned wearing white cotton gloves, carrying a structured handbag that looked like it belonged in a museum. She placed it gently on the table. Monica gasped. The greed in her eyes was naked. She reached out and touched the skin. She picked it up, posing with it in the mirror. "It is perfect," she whispered. "I will take it. And the shoes. And that scarf over there. The silk one with the floral print." Jason did the math in his head. 32,000 for the bag. Another 1,000 for the shoes. 500 for the scarf. She was spending almost the entire deposit. "Monica," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "Please." She ignored him. She looked at the associate. "Wrap it up. We will take it with us." "How would you like to pay?" the associate asked, moving to the register. Monica reached into her purse. She didn't pull out the cash. She pulled out a sleek black credit card. Jason froze. He recognized that card. It wasn't hers. It wasn't his. It was the emergency card Harold kept in the hidden compartment of his wallet, the one wallet he had left in the glove box. It was a card Jason had never seen his father use, a card he thought was just a backup for gas or groceries. "Use this," Monica said, handing the card to the woman with a flourish. "It is a corporate account." Jason grabbed her wrist. "Monica, that is Dad's card. You can't use that. He will see the charge." "He is gone, Jason," she hissed, her eyes wide and crazy. "He is wandering the desert. By the time anyone finds him, or by the time he figures out how to call a bank, we will be in Arizona. Besides, we have power of attorney, remember. We have the right to use his assets for his care." "His care," Jason whispered, horrified. "A crocodile bag is for his care. It is for my emotional distress caused by his care," she retorted, pulling her arm free. The sales associate took the card. She looked at the name on the back. Harold King. She looked at Monica. She looked at Jason. "I am his daughter," the associate lied smoothly. He authorized the purchase. The associate typed something into the terminal. She swiped the card. Jason held his breath. He expected it to go through. His father always paid his bills. His credit was perfect. The machine beeped, a loud, dissonant tone that cut through the quiet store. The associate frowned. She tried again. She inserted the chip. Beep. She looked at the screen. Her expression shifted from polite indifference to cold, professional alert. She didn't hand the card back. She placed it on the counter behind her and typed a code into her register. "Is there a problem?" Monica asked, her foot tapping impatiently. "One moment, ma'am," the associate said. Her voice was different now. Stiff. The system is asking for a verbal authorization code. It happens with large purchases. She picked up the phone next to the register. She dialed a number. Jason stood up. We should go, Monica. We should go right now. Sit down, Monica snapped. It is just a security check. It is fine. But it wasn't fine. High above them, in a penthouse suite at the hotel connected to the mall, Harold King was watching a notification pop up on his tablet. The Omega Protocol monitored every attempt to access his financial grid. The moment the card was swiped at Gucci, the system flagged it. It didn't just decline the transaction. It sent a level red alert to the merchant indicating that the card was not just lost, but stolen during the commission of a felony involving a vulnerable adult. The sales associate nodded into the phone. Yes, I see. Yes, he is right here. Understood. She hung up the phone. She didn't look at Monica. She looked past them toward the entrance of the store. Two men in dark suits were walking briskly toward the back of the store. They were not the regular mall security. They were distinct. They moved with the heavy, purposeful gait of off-duty police officers working private detail. Ma'am, the associate said, her voice loud and clear. This card has been reported stolen. The account holder has flagged this transaction as fraudulent activity. Stolen, Monica shrieked, standing up so fast she knocked over her champagne glass. That is a lie. That is my father's card. I have permission. The two security guards arrived. One of them, a man the size of a linebacker, stepped between Monica and the exit. Ma'am, we need you to step away from the counter, the guard said. We have received a notification from the issuer. This card is flagged for immediate confiscation, and we have been instructed to detain the individuals attempting to use it until law enforcement arrives. Law enforcement, Jason squeaked. His legs gave out, and he sat back down heavily on the velvet sofa. Yes, sir, the guard said, looking at Jason. Attempted grand larceny. Identity theft. The Las Vegas Metro Police are on their way. Monica's face went from red to chalk white in a second. Police. If the police came, they would run their IDs. They would see the missing person report filed for Harold. They would connect the dots. They would see that the missing man's card was being used to buy handbags in Vegas by the very people who reported him missing. We can't talk to the police, Monica whispered. Jason, we can't talk to the police. She looked at the guard. She turned on the charm, trying to force a smile onto her terrified face. Look, there has been a misunderstanding. My father... He gets confused. He probably forgot he gave me the card. We don't need the police, we will just leave. We don't want the bag. I am afraid it is too late for that, ma'am, the guard said, crossing his massive arms. The store has a zero-tolerance policy for credit fraud. The call has been made. Jason looked at the door. He looked at the guard. He looked at Monica. They were trapped. They were going to be arrested right here in the Gucci store, surrounded by silk scarves and judgment. Unless... Jason stood up. His hand went to his pocket. He felt the cash. The $50,000. The blood money. Wait, he said. His voice was shaking so hard he could barely form the words. Wait. We can fix this. He pulled the stack of bills out of his pocket. It was a thick brick of $100 bills wrapped in a bank band. The sales associate's eyes widened. The guard looked at the cash, then at Jason. We have cash, Jason said. We have cash. We will pay for the bag. We will pay for the trouble. Just let us go. You want to buy the bag now? The associate asked, confused. No, Monica interrupted, realizing what Jason was doing. We don't want the bag. We want to pay for the damage. She gestured vaguely at the spilled champagne on the carpet. We will give you the money, she said, desperate. Just cancel the police call. Please. My father. He is very sick. If he finds out we were arrested, it will kill him. We can't have a scandal." She grabbed a stack of bills from Jason's hand. She slammed it on the counter next to the declined card. $10,000. The guard looked at the money. $10,000 was a lot of money. But he shook his head. "I can't do that, ma'am. That is bribery." "20,000, Monica screamed. She grabbed another stack. She was throwing the loan shark's money onto the glass counter like she was feeding a fire. She didn't care about Vinnie Moretti anymore. She cared about the handcuffs she could see in her imagination. $20,000 for a spilled glass of champagne and a misunderstanding, she pleaded. "Just let us walk out the door. We will leave the card. We will never come back." The store manager had appeared, drawn by the commotion. He was a small man with sharp eyes. He looked at the money. He looked at the terrified couple. He looked at the security guard. He did a quick calculation. If the police came, it would be hours of paperwork. Statements, a scene, bad for business. If they took the money as a civil restitution settlement for the disruption and the potential damage to the brand image. "Fine," the manager said. $20,000 for the damages. And you leave immediately. And you are banned from this location and every other location in this mall for life. Done. Jason gasped. He didn't hesitate. He peeled off the bills. His hands were slick with sweat. He was handing over nearly half of their salvation. Half of the money meant to save his kneecaps. He pushed the pile toward the manager. The manager nodded to the guard. The guard stepped aside. "Go," the manager said. "Before I change my mind." Monica grabbed her purse. She didn't look at the crocodile bag. She didn't look at the shoes. She grabbed Jason's arm and dragged him toward the door. They ran. They didn't walk. They ran out of the store, past the staring tourists, past the fountains, past the statues. They ran until they burst out of the mall doors and into the stifling heat of the Las Vegas night. They stopped on the sidewalk, gasping for air. Jason bent over, hands on his knees, dry heaving. "You spent $20,000, Monica screamed at him, shoving him hard. "You gave them $20,000. You were going to get us arrested," Jason yelled back, straightening up. His fear was turning into anger. "You used the card. You said it would work." "It should have worked," Monica shrieked. "He is senile. He doesn't know how to report a card stolen." "Someone helped him," Jason said. The realization hit him like a cold bucket of water. "Someone helped him, Monica. He isn't wandering the desert. He is awake. He knows." Monica went still. Her eyes darted around the shadows of the parking lot. Paranoia began to set in. "We have 30,000 left," she whispered. "Vinnie wants 50 by Friday." "We are dead," Jason said. "We are dead." "No," Monica said. Her voice was shaky, but she was trying to rebuild her composure, trying to find the next move in a game she was rapidly losing. "We still have the house sale. The wire transfer. 250,000. We just have to survive until Monday. We hide. We don't spend another dime. We wait for the wire." She looked at Jason. Her eyes were pleading now, desperate. "The wire will come, Jason. It has to come." Jason touched his pocket. It felt lighter. Much lighter. "Let's go to the hotel," he said, defeated. "Not the Bellagio. A motel. Somewhere cheap." They walked toward the valet stand, their heads down, their shoulders slumped. They looked like refugees from a war they had started. And high above them, from the balcony of the penthouse suite, Harold King watched them through a pair of high-powered binoculars. He took a sip of his sparkling water. He watched his son stumble. He watched his daughter-in-law shivering in the heat. Phase 1 complete. Harold said to the empty room, "You lost your pride. You lost your cash. Now let's see how you handle the news." He turned back into the suite where a large flat-screen television was paused on a news channel. He picked up the remote. He pressed play. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow we take the house." The neon glow of the cheap motel sign flickered and died, leaving the parking lot in a pool of dirty shadows. But Jason and Monica never even made it to the check-in desk. Before Jason could turn off the engine of the Ford Expedition, his phone began to scream. It wasn't a normal ringtone. It was the specific jarring alarm he had assigned to Mr. Snyder, the real estate shark who had handed them $50,000 cash less than 2 hours ago. Jason looked at the screen, his stomach turning to ice water. "It's him," he whispered. "Why is he calling? Answer it." Monica hissed, reapplying her lipstick with a hand that shook violently. "Act normal. Maybe he just needs the garage code." Jason swiped the screen. "Mr. Snyder, we are just—" "Shut up!" Snyder's voice roared through the speaker so loud, Jason had to pull the phone away from his ear. "Get back to the house, now!" We can't," Jason stammered. "We already left. We are halfway to—" "I don't care if you are on the moon," Snyder interrupted, his voice dropping to a low, lethal growl. "My title company just tried to run the preliminary deed transfer. The system lit up like a Christmas tree. There is a federal lien on the property, Jason. A freeze order. You tried to sell me a seized asset. You tried to commit fraud against me." "What?" Jason gasped. "No, that's impossible. My dad owned it free and clear. There is no lien." "Tell that to the lawyers who just called me screaming," Snyder barked. "I am at the house. You have 20 minutes to get back here and return my $50,000, or I am calling the cops and reporting grand larceny. 20 minutes, Jason." The line went dead. Jason stared at the phone, his face gray. "He knows," he whispered. "The house is frozen. A federal lien." Monica snatched the phone from his hand. "That old man," she screeched, her nails digging into the leather dashboard. "He did something. He wasn't just wandering. He called someone." "We have to go back," Jason said, putting the car in reverse. "If Snyder calls the cops, they will find out about Dad. We have to give him the money." "We don't have the money," Monica screamed, hitting the dashboard. "We gave $20,000 to the Gucci store. We only have 30 left." "We have to beg," Jason said, tears streaming down his face. "We have to tell him it was a mistake." The drive back to the house was a blur of terror. The suburban streets that used to look so welcoming now felt like the walls of a prison closing in. When they pulled into the driveway, the front door was wide open. Snyder's black sedan was parked on the lawn, tearing up the grass. They walked inside. The house smelled of cigarette smoke and violence. Snyder was standing in the living room, flanked by 2 men who looked like they broke rocks with their foreheads. The briefcase was open on the table, empty. "The cash," Snyder said, extending a hand. "All of it. Now." Jason reached into his pockets. He pulled out the remaining bundles. He placed them on the table. They looked pathetic, thin. Snyder counted them with his eyes. He didn't even need to touch them. "This is light," Snyder said. "This is 30. Where is the rest?" We had an expense," Monica said, her voice trembling, her bravado completely gone. "We can get it to you, Monday. We have a wire transfer coming." Snyder laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Monday? There is no wire transfer, sweetheart. I saw the lien notification. The asset is frozen by something called the Omega Trust. Whoever that is, they have more power than a local bank. You aren't getting a dime." He stepped closer, invading their personal space. "You stole $20,000 from me." Before Jason could answer, his phone rang again. A different ringtone. A heavy, rhythmic thumping bass. Jason flinched as if he had been burned. He looked at the caller ID. Vinny M. "Answer it," Snyder ordered, seeing the fear in Jason's eyes. Jason answered. He put it on speaker because his hands were shaking too hard to hold the phone to his ear. "Jason, Vinnie Moretti's voice filled the room, smooth and terrifying. "It is Friday Eve, my friend. I heard you came into some liquidity. I heard you sold the house." Jason looked at Snyder. Snyder looked at the phone, intrigued. I tried Vinnie," Jason squeaked. "There was a complication." "I don't like complications," Vinnie said. "I like payments. You owe me $50,000, plus the VIG. If I don't see you by midnight, Jason, I am going to send some boys to your hotel, and they aren't going to be looking for money anymore. They are going to be looking for kneecaps." The call ended. The silence in the living room was absolute. Jason and Monica stood in the center of the trap they had built. On one side, a hard money lender who had been defrauded of $20,000. On the other side, a crypto loan shark who wanted $50,000 or blood. And behind it all, the ghost of Harold King pulling the strings of a federal freeze that had locked them in this nightmare. Snyder looked at Jason. He looked at the $30,000 on the table. He picked it up and put it in his pocket. "I am keeping this," Snyder said. "Consider it an inconvenience fee. You still owe me 20, and since you owe Vinnie 50, well, looks like you have a math problem." Snyder signaled to his men. They moved toward the door. "You can't leave us here," Monica wailed, grabbing Snyder's arm. "Vinnie will kill us. Please help us." Snyder shook her off with a look of pure disgust. "You tried to sell me a house you didn't own. You abandoned your old man to steal his equity. You are garbage. Vinnie can have you." He walked out. The door slammed shut. Jason collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. "We are dead," he moaned. "We are actually dead." Monica stared at the wall where a family photo used to hang. Her eyes were vacant. "The news," she whispered. "Did Snyder say who blocked the sale, Omega Trust?" "Who cares?" Jason yelled. "Vinnie is coming." "Shut up," Monica hissed. "Turn on the TV." "What? Turn on the TV. Jason, I need to see what is happening. If there is a federal lien, it means something big. Maybe your dad didn't just wander off. Maybe he was arrested. Maybe the government took the house." Jason crawled to the coffee table and grabbed the remote. He pointed it at the television mounted above the fireplace. He pressed power. The screen flickered to life. It was tuned to the local news channel. The volume was low, but the banner at the bottom of the screen was bright red. "Breaking news." Jason read the headline. His breath caught in his throat. Monica gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The headline didn't say elderly man missing. It didn't say couple arrested for fraud. It read, "Mystery billionaire emerges in Nevada. And there, standing at a podium with the governor wearing a suit that cost more than their car, was a man who looked exactly like Harold King. But he didn't look frail. He didn't look senile. He looked like a titan." "That's," Jason whispered. "That's Dad." "Turn it up," Monica screamed. "Turn it up!" Jason fumbled with the remote. The sound filled the room, drowning out their panic, drowning out the threats of the loan sharks, replacing it with a new, impossible horror. They weren't watching a rescue report. They were watching their own execution broadcast live in high definition. The volume of the television seemed to fill the room, pushing against the walls, vibrating in the floorboards, drowning out the frantic beating of Jason's heart. The news anchor, a woman with perfect hair and a grave expression, was speaking, but for a moment the words didn't register. Jason was too focused on the banner scrolling across the bottom of the screen. "Breaking news. Mystery billionaire reveals identity. Historic mineral rights deal signed." It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Jason blinked, trying to clear the haze of panic and exhaustion from his eyes. He looked at Monica. She was frozen, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the screen as if she were witnessing a car crash. "We are live from the governor's mansion in Carson City," the anchor said, her voice crisp and professional. Where a press conference is underway that has shocked the financial world. For decades, the ownership of the massive Sector 7G lithium deposit in the Nevada desert has been a subject of speculation. Today, the owner has stepped forward to sign an exclusive development contract with the Department of Energy and Tesla Motors. The camera angle shifted. It cut to a wide shot of a podium adorned with the state seal. There were flags. There were men in military uniforms. There was the governor smiling and clapping. And then walking out from the wings came a man. He was tall. He walked with a cane, but he didn't lean on it. He used it like a scepter. He was wearing a charcoal gray three-piece suit that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin. His hair was trimmed and styled silver and distinguished. He looked like a statesman. He looked like a titan of industry. Jason gasped. The air left his lungs in a painful whoosh. It was Harold. It was his father. But it wasn't the father he knew. This wasn't the man who wore oil-stained polo shirts and complained about the price of milk. This wasn't the man who shuffled around the kitchen making instant coffee. This was a man who radiated power. This was a man who could buy and sell everyone in the room without blinking. He stepped to the microphone. The flashbulbs erupted a strobe light effect that made him look like he was standing in the center of a storm. Monica let out a sound that was half whimper, half scream. "No," she whispered. "That isn't him. That can't be him. We left him. He didn't have any money." Harold raised a hand. The room went silent instantly. Even through the television speakers, the command in his gesture was palpable. "Thank you," Governor Harold said. His voice was deep, resonant, and steady. It didn't sound like the raspy voice of the old man Jason had left at the gas station. It sounded like Judgment Day. "I am Harold King," he continued. "For 40 years I have lived quietly. I have kept my assets hidden. I have kept my business private. I believed that wealth should be a tool, not a lifestyle. I believed that hard work was the only currency that mattered." He paused, looking directly into the camera lens. It felt like he was looking through the screen, straight into Jason's living room, straight into Jason's soul. "But recent events have forced me to change my philosophy," Harold said. "I have decided to liquidate my holdings. I have just signed a contract transferring the mineral rights of my property to the state. The value of this transaction is $850 million. Jason fell to his knees. The number hit him like a physical blow. $850 million. He thought about the map. He thought about the yellowed paper he had pulled from the safe just hours ago. He thought about the red circles. He thought about Monica ripping it in half. He thought about the black garbage bag sitting in the wheelie bin outside. He had thrown it away. He had held $1 billion in his hands, and he had thrown it in the trash because he was too stupid to read it. "I threw it away," Jason whispered, his voice cracking. "Monica, I threw it away." Monica wasn't listening. She was shaking her head violently, clawing at her own arms. "He is lying," she shrieked. "He is a mechanic. He fixes cars," Harold continued speaking on the screen. "Many have asked why I am coming forward now," he said. "Why end the privacy I guarded for so long? The answer is simple. I no longer have anyone to protect." The reporters in the room murmured. One shouted a question. "Mr. King, do you have family? Will this fortune be inherited?" Harold's face hardened. The mask of the benevolent billionaire slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing the cold, righteous fury underneath. "I had a family," Harold said. "I had a son. I had a daughter-in-law. I had a granddaughter." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a piece of paper. It wasn't the contract. It was a crumpled, stained piece of yellow notebook paper. Jason recognized it instantly. It was the note Monica had written. The note she had thrown in the trash with his pills. "This note," Harold said, holding it up for the cameras, was written by my family. It was left for me 3 days ago. The camera zoomed in. The handwriting was legible on the massive high-definition screen. Harold read it aloud. Do not come back for him until the papers are signed and the house is sold. Tell the police he wandered off. He is just a burden now. A collective gasp went through the press room. 3 days ago, Harold said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, my son Jason and his wife Monica drove me into the desert under the pretense of a family vacation. They pulled into a gas station 300 miles from here. They waited until I went inside. And then they drove away. No, Jason moaned, curling into a ball on the floor. No, stop. Please stop. They didn't just leave me, Harold continued. They threw my heart medication in a dumpster. They left me without water, without money, without ID. They left me to die in 100-degree heat so they could sell my home to pay off their gambling debts. The screen split. On the left was Harold at the podium. On the right, a new video feed appeared. It was grainy black and white security footage. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. Jason watched in horror as his own car appeared on the screen. He saw himself standing by the pump. He saw his father walking toward the restroom looking frail and trusting. He saw himself get back in the car. He saw Monica's arm come out the window. He saw the medicine bag fly into the trash. And then he saw the car speed away. It was brutal. Seeing it from the outside, stripped of his own justifications and panic. It looked exactly like what it was. It looked like murder. The footage continued. It showed Harold running out of the store. It showed him stumbling. It showed him frantically digging through the garbage covered in filth, desperate for his life. Jason retched. He couldn't breathe. The reality of his crime was no longer a secret he could bury. It was being broadcast to millions of people. That man, Harold said, pointing to the screen where his desperate younger self was collapsing against a trash can, is dead. The father who loved his son unconditionally died in that parking lot. The man standing before you is what survived. Harold looked at the camera again. His eyes were dry. There was no pity in them. To my son Jason, he said, I know you are watching. I know you tried to sell my house today. I know you signed a fraudulent contract with a loan shark. I know you are sitting in my living room wondering how this happened. Monica backed away from the TV until she hit the wall. She slid down it, burying her face in her hands. I want you to know, Harold said, that I have established the Omega Trust. As of 10 minutes ago, every asset I own, every dollar of this contract, and every property in my name has been transferred into this irrevocable trust. The sole beneficiary is the National Center for Elder Abuse Prevention. He paused, letting the weight of that sentence settle. You will not inherit a dime, Jason. You will not get the house. You will not get the savings. You traded $850 million for a quick sale to a criminal. The camera pulled back. Harold adjusted his cuffs. And one last thing he said. I have provided this footage along with wiretap evidence of your fraud to the district attorney. The Nevada State Police and the FBI are currently en route to my former residence. Jason scrambled up from the floor. He ran to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. But in the distance, he could hear it. A low wail. Sirens. Lots of them. He looked back at the TV. Harold was gathering his papers. I suggest you don't run, Harold said, as if he could see Jason peering through the blinds. You have nowhere to go. You have no money. You have no friends. And unlike you, I am not leaving you to die. I am leaving you to face justice. Harold turned and walked off the stage. The press erupted into chaos. The screen went black as Jason turned off the TV with trembling hands. The silence in the room was absolute, but it was a different kind of silence now. It wasn't the silence of secrets. It was the silence of the end. Monica looked up from the floor. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. She looked old. She looked broken. "He did it," she whispered. "He actually did it." Jason looked at her. He looked at the woman who had convinced him to destroy his life. He looked at the greed that had consumed them both. He stood up. He walked to the front door. He opened it. The sirens were louder now. Blue and red lights flickered at the end of the street, turning the corner. "Where are you going?" Monica screamed, scrambling to her feet. "We have to hide. We have to leave," Jason shook his head. He felt a strange sense of calm. The map was gone. The money was gone. The house was gone. But for the first time in days, the lying was over. "I am waiting for them," Jason said. "I am tired, Monica. I am just so tired." He stepped out onto the porch. He sat down on the steps where his father used to sit and drink coffee. He put his head in his hands. He waited for the lights to come. He waited for the handcuffs. And as the first police cruiser screeched to a halt in front of the lawn, Jason King realized that his father had given him one last gift. He had stopped him from running. The blue and red strobe lights from the police cruisers washed over the living room walls in a rhythmic, nauseating cycle, illuminating the wreckage of the life Jason had tried to sell for pennies. He had retreated from the porch the moment the first news van pulled up, the bright glare of a camera light hitting him like a physical blow. He wasn't brave enough to face the public. He wasn't brave enough to face the consequences. He had scrambled back inside, locking the door, dragging Monica with him, hiding in the dark like a rat in a trap. Outside, the noise was a cacophony of judgment. The wail of sirens had died down, replaced by the crackle of police radios and the low, buzzing murmur of the crowd gathering on the lawn. Through the gap in the curtains, Jason could see them. The police were establishing a perimeter yellow tape stretching across the driveway, where his father used to wash the car on Sundays. Behind the police line, the press were setting up tripods, hungry for the shot of the greedy son being dragged out in cuffs. But what terrified Jason the most wasn't the police or the reporters. It was the black sedan parked just beyond the streetlights, idling in the shadows. He knew who was inside. He knew that Vinnie Moretti's men were watching, waiting for a gap in the chaos, waiting for the moment the police turned their backs. They didn't want justice. They wanted their $50,000, and they would carve it out of Jason's flesh if they had to. Monica was curled in the corner of the sofa, rocking back and forth, muttering to herself. She had broken completely. The woman who had slapped him, who had driven the car, who had ripped up the map, was gone. In her place was a terrified child, waiting for the monster to come out of the closet. Jason looked at his phone. His hands were slick with sweat, the screen smeared and slippery. He had one lifeline left. One person who had saved him every single time he had screwed up his entire life. One person who, despite everything, had always been there to catch him. He dialed the number. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Please," Jason whispered to the empty room. "Please pick up. Please be my dad. Just for 1 minute. Be my dad." The line clicked open. There was no greeting, no warm hello. Just the sound of breathing on the other end, steady and calm. "Dad." Jason choked out. The word felt foreign in his mouth. "Dad, are you there?" For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Harold's voice came through. It wasn't the voice of the billionaire on the news. It wasn't the voice of the mechanic. It was a voice Jason had never heard before. It sounded like the desert wind, empty and relentless. "I am here, Jason. Dad." Jason sobbed, clutching the phone with both hands. "You have to stop them. They are outside. The police, the news. And Vinnie. Vinnie's guys are down the street. They are going to kill me, Dad. You have to tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I panicked. Tell them I was coming back for you." "You weren't coming back," Harold said. The statement was flat, a fact as undeniable as gravity. "You signed the deed. You took the cash. You went shopping." "I was scared." Jason screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. Monica made me do it. I have debts, Dad. You don't understand. I owe money to bad people. I was desperate. I didn't want to hurt you. I just needed the house. You didn't need the house, Harold replied. You needed the map. Jason froze. The map. The yellow paper Monica had torn to shreds. The paper he had thrown in the garbage bin outside, where it was now sitting waiting for the police to find it, as evidence of his stupidity. The map, Jason whispered. I left you a map, Jason Harold said. In the safe. It wasn't a drawing. It was a geological survey of the lithium deposit beneath the land. That piece of paper you let your wife tear up, that was the deed to an $850 million fortune. The air left Jason's lungs. The room spun. He fell to his knees, the phone pressed against his ear. No, he moaned. No. It was just dirt. It was just lines. It was your future, Harold said. I saved it for you. I waited for you to be ready. I waited for you to show me 1 ounce of character, 1 ounce of grit. I thought if I lived simply, if I taught you the value of $1, you would grow up to be a man who could handle that kind of wealth. But you didn't grow up, Jason. You just grew old and hungry. Dad, please, Jason begged, tears streaming down his face, dripping onto the carpet. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I will do anything. Just call the police off. Pay Vinny. I know you have the money now. You can save me. You have to save me. I am your son. I saved you 1,000 times, Harold said. When you crashed your first car, when you failed college, when you lost your first job, when you got into debt the first time. I was always there. I was the net. The voice on the phone paused. But a net only works if the person falling wants to be caught. You didn't want to be caught, Jason. You wanted to cut the net and sell the rope. You abandoned me in a parking lot to die of heat stroke. You threw away my medicine. That wasn't desperation. That was a choice. Dad, don't do this, Jason whispered. I will go to prison. I will die in there. Harold's voice dropped lower, becoming intimate and terrifying. You want to talk about inheritance, Jason. You wanted my legacy. You have it. This is it. What Jason asked, confused. You thought inheritance was money, Harold said. You thought it was a house or a bank account. You were wrong. Inheritance is the sum total of your choices. It is the consequences of who you are. I am bequeathing you exactly what you earned. I am leaving you the wreckage of your own greed. That is your inheritance, son. You built it. Now you have to live in it. The lights outside flashed brighter blue and red strobes, cutting through the darkness of the living room. A bullhorn crackled to life in the street. Jason King, this is the Las Vegas Police Department. Come out with your hands up. Jason flinched. He looked at the window. He looked at Monica, who hadn't moved. Dad, Jason said, his voice barely a breath. Help me. Please. I am scared. There was a long silence on the line. For a fleeting second, Jason thought he heard a sigh, a ghost of the father who used to read him bedtime stories. But when Harold spoke again, the ghost was gone. I know you are scared, Harold said. I was scared too, Jason. When I stood in that parking lot and realized my own flesh and blood had left me behind like trash, I was terrified, but I started walking. Harold took a breath. Goodbye, Jason. Don't call this number again. The man who used to answer it doesn't exist anymore. The line clicked dead. Jason lowered the phone slowly. He stared at the black screen. He felt a coldness spreading through his chest, a finality that was heavier than the handcuffs waiting for him. His father hadn't just hung up. He had erased him. The bullhorn boomed again. We are coming in. Jason stood up. His legs felt numb. He looked at Monica. They are here, he said hollowly. Monica looked up. Her eyes were empty. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "We lost the $1 billion, Jason. We had it in our hands, and we tore it up." The front door burst open with a deafening crash. A battering ram decimated the lock. Tactical lights flooded the hallway, blinding and white. Men in body armor swarmed into the house, shouting commands. "Get on the ground! Show me your hands!" Jason dropped to his knees. He raised his hands in the air. He didn't look at the police. He looked at the coffee table where the empty space of the missing cash briefcase seemed to mock him. As the officers grabbed his arms and wrenched them behind his back, Jason didn't fight. He felt the cold steel of the handcuffs click shut around his wrists. It was a familiar mechanical sound. He was dragged out of the house, out into the humid night air. The flashes of the press cameras exploded like fireworks, blinding him. The reporters shouted questions he couldn't understand. He saw the neighbors standing on their lawns, watching with arms crossed. He saw the black sedan down the street start its engine and slowly drive away. Vinny knew he couldn't touch Jason now, not while he was federal property. Jason was shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable. The smell of the car was antiseptic and cold. He looked out the window as the car began to move. He looked at the house one last time. The house he had grown up in. The house he had tried to sell. And as the cruiser turned the corner, taking him away from his life forever, Jason realized the cruelest truth of all. His father was right. He hadn't been robbed. He hadn't been cheated. He had been given exactly what he asked for. He wanted the quick way out. He wanted the easy money. He closed his eyes and leaned his head against the glass. He saw the map in his mind, the red circles, the jagged lines. He saw the fortune he had shredded. He started to laugh. It was a quiet, broken sound that bubbled up from his chest. He laughed until the tears came back hot and stinging. He laughed because it was the only thing left to do. He was the man who threw away a kingdom for a used handbag and a lie. And now he had all the time in the world to think about it. The flashing lights of the police cruisers finally faded into the distance, taking my son and his wife away to a concrete cell where they would have decades to debate whose fault it really was. Monica did not go quietly like Jason. She came out kicking and screaming, hurling curses at the news cameras, blaming the government, blaming the banks, blaming me. She looked deranged, her makeup smeared across her face like war paint, her expensive heels dragging on the pavement. She screamed that she was a victim, that she was a mother, that she deserved better. But the handcuffs didn't care about her excuses, and neither did the crowd. As they shoved her into the back of the second cruiser, I saw the neighbors' people she had looked down on for years, shaking their heads. They knew. Everyone knew. The police taped off the front door of the house. The yellow tape fluttered in the warm night breeze, a barrier sealing off 40 years of memories. The house was now a crime scene. It was evidence. It would eventually be seized, sold at auction, and bought by strangers who would paint over the walls and forget the tragedy that happened there. And that was fine by me. I didn't want the house. I didn't want the memories. I wanted the horizon. 2 days later, I stood in the private hangar of the airfield in Las Vegas. The air smelled of jet fuel and possibility. Rex Power stood next to me holding a leather portfolio. He looked tired but satisfied, the look of a man who had just won the Super Bowl of litigation. "It is all done, Hal," Rex said, handing me a pen. "The trust is funded. The donation to the National Center for Elder Abuse Prevention is the largest in history. They are naming a wing after you. The criminal charges against Jason and Monica are stickier than superglue. They aren't getting bail. The DA is making an example out of them." I took the pen. I looked at the documents. It was the final transfer. I was giving Awa the fortune I had revealed to the world just 48 hours ago. $850 million. Gone. Signed away to help people who couldn't fight for themselves. I didn't hesitate. I signed my name with a flourish. Harold King. "You are keeping nothing," Rex asked quietly. Not even a few million for a rainy day. I smiled. I kept enough to buy a tank of gas and a decent meal, I said. And I bought one toy. That is all I need. Rex nodded. He understood. He shook my hand firmly. It was an honor, Hal. If you ever need to destroy anyone else, you have my number. I hope I never have to use it, I said. I walked out of the hangar and onto the tarmac. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Nevada sky in streaks of violent orange and bruised purple. It was beautiful. It was vast. Waiting for me on the pavement was not a limousine. It was not a private jet. It was a 1968 Ford Mustang Fastback, painted a deep midnight blue. It was restored to perfection, the chrome gleaming like mirrors, the engine idling with a low, guttural growl that vibrated in my chest. It was the car I had dreamed of owning when I was 20, back when I was working double shifts and changing diapers back before I sacrificed my dreams for a family that would eventually leave me in the dirt. I walked up to the car. I ran my hand over the roof. It was cool and smooth. This wasn't just a car. It was a time machine. It was a vessel to take me back to the man I was before I became a father, before I became a burden. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. The smell of old leather and gasoline filled my nose, the best perfume in the world. I gripped the wooden steering wheel. My hands were gnarled, spotted with age, but they were strong. They were the hands of a man who had dug for water in the desert and won. I put the car in gear. I didn't look back at the city. I didn't look back at the jail where my son was sitting. I didn't look back at the past. I pressed the gas pedal. The Mustang roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated freedom. The tires bit into the asphalt, and I shot forward, leaving a cloud of dust in my wake. I drove west toward the dying sun. The road stretched out before me, empty and inviting. I was 70 years old. I was an orphan. I was childless. I was alone. And for the first time in 45 years, I was completely, blissfully happy. They thought they could break me. They thought they could erase me. But they forgot one thing. You can't break a man who has already been forged in the fire. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a king. And this road was my kingdom. I turned up the radio. Classic rock filled the cabin. I tapped my fingers on the wheel. I watched the speedometer climb. 60, 70, 80. Let them rot in their cells. Let them blame each other. Let them rot in the hell of their own making. I had a sunset to catch, and this time I wasn't stopping for anyone. I learned that blood does not make a family. Loyalty does. For years I dimmed my own light, hoping my son would find his way in the dark. But I finally realized that some people simply prefer the shadows. By walking away, I didn't just punish their greed. I reclaimed my own dignity. The greatest inheritance you can leave isn't money or a house, it is the example of what you will and will not tolerate. You cannot buy respect, and you should never pay to be loved. Sometimes the only way to save your life is to cut the anchor dragging you down, even if that anchor is your own child. If you agree that respect must be earned and betrayal always has a price, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Would you have donated the fortune like I did, or would you have kept it all for yourself?